Right now, somewhere, a company is watching a smaller competitor and laughing. The competitor is losing money. Everyone can see it. The business model doesn't even make sense on paper. But the real reason nobody's laughing in 5 years isn't luck. It's far stranger than that. In 2000, a small DVD by mail startup walked into a boardroom in Dallas and offered to sell itself for $50 million. The company on the other side of the table ran over 9,000 stores, made billions a year, and had a name everyone in America already knew. They said no. They laughed the founders out of the room. That company was Blockbuster. The startup was Netflix. Think about how insane that decision looks now. Blockbuster wasn't stupid. It was the market leader, run by an executive named John Antioco, who had actually turned the company around once before. Blockbuster had scale, brand recognition, real estate on every corner in the country. Netflix had a website, some red envelopes, and a founder named Reed Hastings, who supposedly got the idea after paying a $40 late fee on a rented copy of Apollo 13. So why did the giant lose? Here's the strange part. Blockbuster wasn't beaten by a better version of Blockbuster. It was beaten by a company that refused to compete on Blockbuster's terms at all. A Harvard Business School professor named Clayton Christensen had already mapped out exactly why this happens, in research that became the book, The Innovator's Dilemma. Big, successful companies get very good at optimizing the thing that made them successful. Blockbuster optimized store locations, new release turnover, and late fees, because late fees alone reportedly brought in hundreds of millions of dollars a year. That number should stop you. Blockbuster's most profitable habit was punishing its own customers. Netflix built its entire first strategy around the opposite idea. No due dates, no late fees, no stores at all. It wasn't a better video store, it was a rejection of what a video store even was. You've probably watched this exact pattern play out somewhere in your own industry. A slow, established player defending a system that quietly annoys its own customers, while a smaller competitor removes the annoyance entirely and gets called not a real threat right up until it is one. But surviving Blockbuster wasn't the real strategy. It was only the first move. The second one is the part most marketers actually study, and most still get wrong. Around 2007, Netflix made a decision that looked financially reckless from the outside. It started cannibalizing its own DVD mail business to push streaming, a technology that, at the time, buffered constantly and had a fraction of the content Blockbuster's shelves could offer. Every rule of protecting an existing revenue stream said, don't do this. Netflix did it anyway, because Hastings had reportedly said internally that the company's real competition wasn't Blockbuster. It was the 4 hours a night people already spent watching television, and streaming was the only version of the product that could actually win that time back from the couch itself. That's a completely different way of defining a competitor. Most companies benchmark against the other companies selling the same thing. Netflix benchmarked against how someone spends their evening. Ask yourself something. Who is your business actually competing against? The other company in your category? Or the thing your customer would rather be doing instead of thinking about you at all? The third move is the one that gets taught in film schools now almost as much as marketing programs. In 2013, Netflix greenlit its first major original series, House of Cards, and did something no studio had ever done before at that scale. It didn't shoot a pilot and test audience reaction the traditional way. A content executive named Ted Sarandos used Netflix's own viewing data, years of it, tracking that subscribers who liked director David Fincher's films also tended to like political dramas, and that actor Kevin Spacey's projects had unusually strong repeat viewership. Netflix committed to 2 full 13-episode seasons before a single episode aired, based almost entirely on that pattern. Every studio rule said test the pilot first. Netflix skipped straight to conviction, because it had a kind of information the rest of the industry simply didn't have access to yet.
It didn't need to guess what people wanted. It had been quietly measuring it for a decade already, one paused episode and one rewatched scene at a time. This is the part worth sitting with, because it's easy to hear these 3 moves as 3 separate lucky bets. They weren't. They were the same underlying belief applied 3 times in a row. Remove the friction the customer resents, Compete for the customer's actual time, not the category's assumed rules. Use the data you already have instead of the data the industry expects you to gather. Notice what's missing from all three of those. Nowhere does the Netflix strategy say, make a louder ad or run a bigger campaign. Blockbuster actually outspent Netflix on marketing for years and still lost. The strategy was never about shouting harder in the same room. It was about quietly deciding the room didn't need to exist. You don't run a billion-dollar streaming company, and neither do most people watching this. But the underlying pattern scales down to almost any business, and that's exactly why it's worth taking apart instead of just admiring. What's the version of the late fee in your own business? Some friction point your customers have quietly hated for years that you've never questioned because it's always brought in decent revenue. What's the real competitor for your customers' attention? The one that isn't even in your industry? And what data are you already sitting on right now that you've never actually used to make a real decision? Most companies wait for permission to break their own model. Blockbuster had 10 years to build a streaming service before Netflix beat them to it. It reportedly even tried a version, late, underfunded, and unconvinced it should really replace the stores. Netflix wasn't smarter, it just wasn't protecting anything. It had nothing to lose by making its own product obsolete, so it did it first, on its own terms, before someone else could do it to them. That's the actual strategy underneath the strategy. Not streaming, not data, not originals. The willingness to make your own current success irrelevant before a competitor makes it irrelevant for you. Somewhere right now, another company is watching a smaller competitor and laughing. The smaller one is losing money, has no stores, no scale, no brand recognition anyone would call real. But the giant laughing at them today is the only one in the room who doesn't yet know which one of them is Blockbuster.
If this kind of thing keeps you thinking hours later, that's exactly what it's supposed to do. Hit like if you want more of these, and subscribe if you want to catch the next one before it goes anywhere.